But the best thing that mothers can do for each other is validate this experience. Validate the difficulty of leaving the house because of the anxiety, the semantics. Validate the difficulty of leaving the house because of the self-confidence and the struggle with body image and the struggle with, as well, when you're sleep deprived, even seeing. Hello and welcome to another vlog on YouTube and podcast on Spotify, an Apple podcast by the Fit Minds podcast. Coach Mariah Jean here. Sorry if my voice is a bit gross. I probably have the 50th daycare sickness. I don't know, I've stopped counting since Lila has started daycare, but we are here doing the podcast. There is no part of me that wanted to do my makeup today, let alone get out of bed. I think I'm on day 5 or 6 of sickness. And if you know, it's not fun. But we're here doing a podcast anyway because it's an incredibly important topic, super relevant for my niche market that I've pivoted to. And if you don't know what that means, it basically means people that I have started working with more and have probably enjoyed working with quite a lot lately, considering how close it is to home, and that is obviously for mothers. Just so you know, I do work with lots of different kinds of people from all walks of life, but my main focus lately has been to help mums, mainly because I see there's just such a gap in the industry. There are mothers out there who coach, for sure. I just think there's a lot of gatekeeping going on perhaps, or competitiveness between mothers. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I want to be the person who is a safe space for mums and who is able to hold understanding, empathy, but also give a perspective, I suppose, from a mother who, I only have one child, right? That could be, the argument could be had that having multiple children would be entirely different, of course. But I want to do anything that I can to help mums more now than ever, given that I've fallen into that category of a human being. Although, to be honest, a lot of what I do is teaching mothers that they're not just mothers, and even having to accept that myself as well, that since becoming a mum, it's an upgrade. The things that you have to accomplish and do under incredible circumstances that are just so taxing and so difficult as a mother it's comparable to nothing. There's nothing I could compare it to in life that is this hard but rewarding. So let's get stuck into today's podcast topic. Coach Chloe isn't with us today because her little one is sick. So as you would know, when you've got a small human being, a newborn, I think potentially Ellie may not be a newborn anymore. Either way, first 1 to 2 years, even with 1 to 3 years of a child's life can be incredibly difficult for lots of different reasons. But this podcast I want to focus on because I think that a lot of the time after having a baby, the focus is always on the baby. And I guess rightfully so for some people, because their connection, may not be that strong with the mother, right? And this is the interesting thing. Your connection with a mum is not very strong, and your emotional awareness of a mother and your friendship is not very strong if your main focus is on their baby. Because if it were strong, you'd be focusing on the mother and her experience postpartum and what's going on for her. So I think that a lot of people will default to looking after or gravitating towards a child because they may not be very close with the mother. And this can often be incredibly isolating for a mother. I'd say even, for example, this might work for extended family, people who love babies for some reason. Obviously they're cute, but also in-laws and things that focus on a child or a baby more than the mother. And there's quite a few reasons for this, I think, and not justifications, but more societally, that we focus on children and babies because they're innocent and they are new and fresh to the world and novel, right? It's this whole new shiny toy, shiny object syndrome. But I want to talk about in this podcast and many others, the struggles for mothers that seem to go unseen, unheard, mainly because of the fascination with a newborn or a baby, which I think is mostly probably somewhat intended to be innocent and caring and kind. But as a mother, as a fellow mother, I have next to no focus on other people's children or babies or anything remotely to do with other people's families, in a sense of the choices they make for their family in that very given moment. And I'm more focused on what a mother can do for herself and what other people can do for that mother. And this podcast talks about basically being able to regain confidence to leave the house after having a child. And it's a multi-layered topic. You could probably go on for a very long time about it. That I certainly, for myself, from my own personal experience and from a lot of mothers' personal experiences, really struggled leaving the house for lots of different reasons. Initially, I think there's always that physical component, which is recovering from birth, recovering from a C-section. There is that initial shock to the body, right? Where it's, you're flat strapped trying to get up out of bed to go and get yourself water or prepare yourself meals or pick up your baby, especially in that initial 24 to 48 hours after a C-section. And I experienced a C-section myself. I was very much prepared because I had been through major surgery for my breast augmentation. I was very, very much prepared for what it would be like to be immobilized, but then to be immobilized to then not be able to do something that was maternally driven to do, and also on medications and things post-birth, which really screwed with my mind. It was crazy how, no pun intended, how much of an influence pain medications had on my mental state. To the point I had to come off them because I just knew something wasn't right. But this not being able to leave the house thing, there's that physical component with C-sections especially, and also with obviously post-birth. You're struggling with things like some women struggle with incontinence, so they might randomly, accidentally wet themselves, which is horrible. Wearing the big nappies as well postpartum because of the lakia, the bleeding, which can happen 6 to 8 weeks. And even for me, it kept happening, I think, 13, 14, 15, 16 weeks post-birth. And the dignity that you lose through this process of oftentimes being in hospital and, you're trying to establish breastfeeding and you're naked. And for those who are comfortable with it, like myself, not so bad, but then it's like the judgment that you get and the list goes on. You also are confronted with this idea that when you physically look down and I remember after having my child, after having Lila, touching my stomach, just going like, oh my God, like that's what's left after having a child. And it's not necessarily the aesthetic part of it. It's the idea that it's just jelly. It's just all floppy and jelly and like everything is so painful. Nothing is together. And you could be able to tell someone where your stomach is, where your bladder is, like it's just all jumbled, especially after a C-section and kind of being moved around. And it's wild, fascinating what the human body is capable of. But so you've got this kind of like all of these physical things, and then you've not just got the mental ramifications of those, but then you've got the mental pressures as well to things like socialize and have family members come in and prepare meals and be on tap for breastfeeding, cluster feeding and things like that. So it's like if you will never understand the pressures of having a child until you have one. Ever, ever, ever. Care whether your sister had a baby, whether your mum told you what it was like. It is not the same as going through the process. And that is not to say to people who don't have children to put shame on them for whatever reason if they can't have children. That's not it at all. It's not like, hey, I'm through this and you haven't. It's more about the idea that you cannot speak of the sheer, I suppose, isolation by default, which it just happens. And it kind of rolls into this giant ball of darkness and difficulty. And you realize very quickly, no matter how much support you have, whether it be from, and we didn't have a lot of direct support, and that's nobody else's fault, we've said that before, where we live is far away from our relatives, we chose to live here, all of that jazz. But we weren't prepared. We weren't prepared for the idea that this small human would only want to be with me most of the time, 95% of the time. And when she was okay to be with somebody else, it was always Alex as the secondary, which is obviously understandable as being dad. And, the minute you hand her off to somebody else, she would just cry. Not to mention that there are all these other challenges which go into things like feeding, right? And so Lila went 7 weeks without gaining weight. So there were 7 weeks there where my child was incredibly hungry. I didn't know what to do. I had no idea what I was doing. I was getting advice from the Breastfeeding Association, and they were saying to keep feeding as frequently as possible, feed on demand, and here I was absolutely exhausted. Dad had been diagnosed with cancer around that time too. And just thinking to myself, I have no idea what to do from here. So the anxiety that develops and the depression that kind of comes after that anxiety and the sleep deprivation, you end up feeling as though leaving your house is much harder than it's worth. So it's a circumstantial thing. Is my going to cry uncontrollably in the car? Driving more than 15 minutes away from your home seems like slow torture. The screaming is so loud that your watch tells you and gives you a warning saying, hey, you're in a dangerously loud environment for noise. It's like, yeah, no shit. And the baby is screaming so much all the time, you can't even have a conversation with your partner. You try and talk to each other and you can't. You signal to each other and sign to each other and you're scared you're going to wake up the baby. And so even things like being told that, their circadian rhythm needs to get in check. And so you're kind of worried that if you leave the house, they might fall asleep in the car and then their naps will be all over the place and unpredictable and they won't sleep at night. Or that you're leaving the house, you got to do something enjoyable together, whether it's go for dinner or whether it's, going out. I have a very vivid memory of going to the markets with Lila for the first time we'd ever kind of done something out of the house together, I believe, where it wasn't a doctor's appointment. And for Alex and I, it was one of the most nerve-wracking things I think we've ever done, because we had this fear of Lila just screaming. That as well at the time, I had a fear she wouldn't latch if I had to breastfeed her in public, and we'd started combo feeding by this stage. And, all of these I would say rational fears, because it was realistic that would happen. And your heart's racing and you're sleep deprived and there's people everywhere and as well as people say things like a crying baby shouldn't cause embarrassment. But when your baby cries, people stare. And you don't like being stared at in public or in any other space, right? What I found really interesting though, on that, skipping right to where we are now at 16, 17 months, with Lila, is that she's a tall girl. You guys would know that. She's, she's the size of, height-wise, size-wise, a 2.5, 3-year-old. So she's in size 2 and 3 clothes, and she's 16 months. And I'm so proud of her, going from literally being, third centile underweight baby to just thriving completely was, a beautiful accomplishment for her and for us as parents. Solids dinners there. Loves her food. Doesn't hate any food. Loves all food. I mean, aside from chili, I think. But anyway, she's gotten to this age now where it's she we go out in public. We might try to get out before her midday nap. It's a mad rush out of the house. If you know, ladies. If you're up to that down to, or even the morning and the nap, or even 3 naps, and it's like you'd quickly wake up and quickly go this and quickly get them dressed and quickly change their nappy and get ready, and everyone can leave the house, and it's then you're left with this hour window or less than to try and accomplish something. Anyway, so we left the shops weekend, and my partner Alex, he's got real anxiety with going to the big shopping centre because he's worried about Lila getting knocked over. She's obviously running around now. I just said, let's just go. There's more shops there. It'll give us more opportunity to get what we want and, get things done. And we knew we'd made a plan in the car, right? All the shops, go this shop and this shop or whatever, exactly the things we need to do. Because you cannot just mosey around and browse with a toddler. You do that, she gets bored, or you do that and you waste time and don't actually accomplish the things you wanted to do in the time that you had before she needs to sleep. And this whole concept of people saying kids will sleep when they're tired and let them sleep wherever. It's our kid does not do that. She will run herself ragged until she doesn't sleep and then just stays up and resists sleeping. And so she'll get no sleep. Just gets FOMO really badly. And so, yeah, she doesn't just fall asleep. The only cat naps Lila has ever had is in the car. And they are the worst because obviously when you're driving somewhere to and from, you want them to nap when they get back and then they don't because of the cat nap. Anyway, so we're out in the shopping centre and I could tell like we were starting to kind of somewhat get close. She's been catching up on sleep the last few days because she was sick. So she's been sleeping a lot when she can and she gets tired easily. And we're out and we're probably an hour out from when her nap was and she's starting to get a bit tired and irritable and we're in a shop and, you know, she was squirming, wanted to be put down and get out of the pram. Okay, cool, out of the pram, and then doesn't want to be picked up and then she wants to run around and explore and, you know, jump on things and torment people and steal people's stuff and whatever, as toddlers do. Completely innocent. But what I noticed was that the anxiety that I'd previously had with like a crying newborn or as a first time, you know, this embarrassment or whatever it might be of not wanting to be like subject to people's judgment or people staring or whatever. I looked over at Lila and in the pram having a little nana and I was quite calm. I was in the shops with Alex and went over and took her out and picked her up and took her out. I said, I'm going to take her outside, you know, okay. It was very busy in the shop. Anyway, we got outside and there was this like area with seating where everyone was sitting on their phones and doing whatever. And Lila and I were like, it was like wrestling an alligator that wanted to play. And I had her in my arms and she was just not having it. And she's not, again, like she's not a 16-month-old size. So I'm trying to hold 2.5, 3-year-old size human, like, you know, and I don't know when I'm going to, like how long I'm going to be able to picking her up for, right? So, because she's starting to get like heavier and I'm like, oh, wow. Anyway, and I could feel people looking at me because she was making noises and I could feel people looking at me. And I think it was the first time that I'd ever experienced where Lila she hadn't been causing a scene, just in general, like I knew she was tired. We probably needed to go home. And I didn't care. I just had reached a point where I was like, oh, I'm finally at that stage where I'm like, I have a toddler, keep staring, maybe even make some comments about my parenting choices. Like, I really don't care. Because I was really focused on regulating her and I like tipped her upside down because apparently I've been seeing that obviously safely. Tipped her upside down and, you know, like put her on the couch and started kind of like smacking the pillows and stuff. And I've noticed that when we do that sensory seeking stuff where for toddlers, that's really big at the moment, like this age. She comes down and she focuses on that instead. So we did that and that was really good, really productive. This cold is working against me at the moment. Anyway, so long story short, the good thing is that with some like that, right? You know, you can go from being like I was so anxious that even going for a walk with my baby in a pram on a road that had nobody on it was horrible for me mentally. I just couldn't think of anything worse. You know, I just didn't want to be seen. I wanted to just disappear with me and my baby and go places that I need to go, but just me and her. But it's not like that because they'll communicate, you know, they'll cry when they're cold, they'll cry when they want to feed. And it's like, you also know in public settings that it shouldn't be this way, but some people are not okay with people breastfeeding in public and they stare at you as well, which is just, I see mothers breastfeeding and it's like, I might, because I'll obviously see them with their little one and I'll notice they're breastfeeding and instead of staring at them, I just look away because I'm like, they deserve the privacy. And it's also just a very normal thing. But, you know, it does get, I noticed that breastfeeding in public got easier for me personally. There was always that fear of letdown and stuff. But so these are the very like semantics and, you know, circumstantial stuff. Like this is the start of the confidence to leave the house is worrying about what could go wrong with whatever, with your child, with you, with germs, with, do you know what I mean? There's this like all these types of fears. And so that's already so much as it is. You know, that is already so heavy to carry all of that in your mind, this mental checklist of all the things that you need to do and get and have and the nappy blowouts that could happen and then forgetting an outfit and making sure you bring a dummy and, you know, like we've all packed our nappy bags for our newborns thinking like, how does such a small human need so many things? Versus a toddler, which is like far less, right? So you've already got all this stuff in your mind. And then on top of that, you've got the fear of what other people are going to think. On top of that, you've got the fear of the overstimulation of all the noises and sounds. It's like this. So like leaving your house, to be confident enough to leave your house as it is already so difficult with a child, with a small human being. And like, I'm not surprised that a lot of women hermit and they stay inside and they don't leave and they don't move. And this is why initially, like, it's quite difficult to get exercise for that reason, is this constant, I need to be on demand, but if I leave, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. Having very short windows to work with as well, mind you. The 5-minute drive to the gym couldn't have felt any longer, because it's like, that's then going to take away from my gym time or whatever it might be. So I understand why women choose to train from home, for example, especially in these early years. And then on top of that, it's like then going for walks and everything. Like the semantics of leaving your home is significantly harder in those early days. And even then, it's hard in different ways as they get older, right? It's like trying to get them to put their shoes on, or just not keep taking their shoes off has been my trouble with my toddler lately. Is like, please leave your shoes on your feet, to the point where we just send her to daycare without shoes and she just wears socks, because I know there's sock shoes. I've got them on order. Rookie era, wasn't prepared for this stage. But I mean, it's, again, being a parent for the first time, right? And this is why I think like second or third child, it's easier I haven't got one, but I've heard, and I would imagine it's easier in different ways, because the semantic side of things you somewhat understand, and obviously every child is different, and then obviously having a second child plus a first is extra load. So it's like, then it's just harder in different ways. But that's all of that, right? That's like everybody else that we're thinking about, that is the concerns, and having that lack of confidence to leave, right? And also just being so exhausted that you don't want to people. You don't want visitors and you don't want to go outside. You just want to hermit and vegetate inside your, inside your little cave, right? So I understand that. And I actually really enjoyed that bubble for the first, few weeks. It was really nice. And then it actually became my demise. It became the thing that saw my mental health significantly decline, because I needed fresh air, I needed sunshine, I needed to get out of my own head, I needed to stop stressing so much about breastfeeding. And yet, even just getting out of my bedroom, going to the kitchen in those early days, if I was to go back to my step count back then, it was so low. So like this is a very stage for a mother, right? And this is why I was talking about this other podcast. So much focus goes on the baby and children in this early phase, and we've got it so backwards, because that is the last person that needs anyone's attention from the outside. The mother needs the attention from the outside. Anytime I get the opportunity, when someone says, so-and-so's having a baby, I'm thinking about buying them a gift for the baby, I'm like, don't do that. And like, oh, but it would be so nice. I'm like, have you ever met that human being? Why? They've got plenty of clothes and shoes, I can guarantee it. Get something for the mother. Get something for mum. Get something for mum that encourages her to get out of the house, or someone to come to her, whatever it might be, or a meal service or something, or cook them some meals. Do something for that mother, because you're inadvertently doing something for the family. The mother is the glue that holds the family together. Do something for mum. Don't do something for the baby. Unless you are like immediate family members, I genuinely think that one of the most disingenuous things you could do for a new mother, if you know her, is to gift her something for her child, but not for her. And I don't mean a physical present, but something that's going to make her postpartum experience easier, or is going to alleviate some of that pressure and that anxiety, which all feeds into the whole not leaving the house thing. We talk about postpartum depression and anxiety as if they're just labels that we smack on people, but we don't actually really realize what we're not doing and doing that actually contributes to that bigger picture significantly as a society. And this is why my sole focus as a coach has been to focus on mothers, is to move and shift into the space of my focus is mum. I focus on mum. That's what I do. Baby, very cute, very sweet, lovely, awesome. I don't know that baby from a bar of soap, but I do know that mother, right? So the whole other side of this is going to be that having anxiety about leaving the house because you are not confident in the way that you look. You don't recognize yourself. Your tummy is separated. Your pants don't fit you anymore. Nothing fits you anymore. Your clothes don't fit you anymore. Your underwear fits differently. You're so self-conscious of so many parts of you, because the thing is, right, people see you with the newborn, but then it's like people still have this disconnect with the idea that a mother's body slowly heals and changes postpartum, right? And that if she does not have the support to understand her nutrition or whatever and do that slowly, lots of different things can happen. She can attempt to lose weight too quickly, and therefore losing weight quickly also sometimes, as we see, can impact supply. This is why I stopped tracking food. I was tracking my macros, I think, for maybe a week or two, I think postpartum, maybe a few months after, and I just stopped because I was like, need to focus on eating enough food, right? But for breastfeeding, the anxiety that we have on this other side of the fence is our entire identity. It's like things like the fact that we don't have time to do our makeup and hair, or if we try and do it, the baby would cry, and so then we need to hold them while we do it. But how do we do that? We put them in the carrier, and then we feel bad because it's hot and sweaty, and we try and straighten our hair, and we're worried about the straightener burning the baby, and then we need to get a meal in before we go out because we don't want to spend money on takeaway foods, or we know that if we have to sit and wait for something, the baby might get impatient and need to go for a nap because obviously their wake windows are very short. And so it's like even just paying attention to our physical appearance, brushing our hair, you know what I mean? Changing our clothes, getting out of our pajamas into other clothes, because to do that you need to take the baby off you and go and have a shower, but then the baby will cry if you go and have a shower and you don't have the baby in there with you because they want to touch you and it's not your fault. Like, or theirs. That's just a biological thing that happens, right? And so there is this huge frustration with the idea that you so desperately just want to just be a human. You just want to function, get dressed, look somewhat presentable, maybe regain some confidence after a lot of your dignity was lost, maybe in a hospital setting, or maybe just in general because you've just given birth and your body looks entirely different again. You just got used to this, glowing pregnant belly, and then postpartum, it's like not a single person that I've seen, unless they have, had a baby themselves and they advocate for this, has glorified or like celebrated. It's not a societal thing to celebrate the female body after having a child. And something I did really early on to try and fight those inner demons was I posted my body, my postpartum body. I posted myself in my underwear. I posted, all the time and it was like, I think maybe it's like people have this idea of mothers, they shouldn't be exposing themselves like that. And I'm like, there is nothing wrong with the female body for us to have this assumption that we should cover up. And not just that, I wanted to show like pregnant body, postpartum body, still healing, still working on me body, even years after having a child, because I wanted to show that there is no shame, that it's okay. Like your body's going to look different. It will also change. Your abdominal wall will eventually come back together if you're working on ab separation exercises and all that type of stuff. You will eventually lose the additional body fat. You will eventually lose the fluid because that's inevitable. But there's pressure as well. There's significant pressure of, we've seen some mums who have babies and they lose the baby weight really, really, really quickly. Whole bounce back culture and all that type of stuff, which, to be completely honest, there's no such thing as bouncing back. Like it's either as someone who's not eating enough food and they've lost body fat or like enough calories, or they're over consuming and they're kind of sitting there comparing themselves to the people who are in this position. I would hope to think that, the 20 something kilos that I lost across a year and sustained it, was done in a healthy and sustainable way. And I honestly didn't track, other than those 2 weeks, I didn't track my food. So it was like, I wasn't starving myself. I just had an awareness, and it was like over time, it's actually really weird, but most of that weight came off from fluid initially in the first, few months. And just knowing, okay, cool, like this midnight snacking that I was doing while breastfeeding probably wasn't helping, but I wasn't ashamed of that. It was hard. I was like, I just want to get back to who I am and who I was before. I don't feel anymore, and I don't feel comfortable in clothes. I would break down and just be like, nothing fits, or at least all my pregnancy stuff fits, but it doesn't fit, it's all baggy. So then I'd have to go and find other clothes, but then to do that, you got to shop or you go online and then you try it on and it's like, it's still not quite right. And I don't like the way that I look in it. And so there's this huge tug of war with like wanting to just care for and look after your baby, but then also having any form of self-confidence or dignity. So leaving the house also means having to face the idea that you look a certain way and you've got to leave the house looking that way. And it's not necessarily what other people think about you, but what you think about yourself when you catch yourself in the reflection, in the glass window when shopping, and you think like, who is that? And like you kind of grab your tummy and look at it. Oh, that's still there. We're left with a lot, honestly. Mothers, after having children, after having a baby, it's like all the pieces are on the floor and we've got to pick them up, right? There is a lot that we have to go through. And this isn't to get people to feel sorry for us, but to understand as mothers, the best thing we can do is give each other, because I don't think we'll ever get the full validation that we need from others, because if they haven't experienced it, you just can't. And that's okay. Like, I'm a really big believer in like some things just are the way that they are, not out of negligence or complacency, but just out of purely innocent ignorance, basically. For most men, obviously, some men can get as close as possible to understanding, but never will fully understand. But I don't hold that against the ones that attempt to. But the best thing that mothers can do for each other is validate this experience, validate the difficulty of leaving the house because of the anxiety, the semantics, validate the difficulty of leaving the house because of the self-confidence and the struggle with body image and the struggle with, as well, when you're sleep deprived, even seeing anything remotely positive about yourself, right? Because a lot of that, the negative self-talk in there as well. And also splitting this identity from previous self to pregnant self to postpartum self, who will be, it's a progressive, it's a project, right? It's a thing it's an ongoing thing. And it's an up and down thing too. It's like I got so far this day. And even similar with now, like daycare, it's like I'm constantly sick, so I'm missing a lot of training. I'm not getting my steps in on these days when I'm quite unwell. And it's constant. Like if you have children, have sent them to daycare, it is brutal. There is absolutely no other word for it other than brutal. Brutal, 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 relentless. It is almost like, I would liken it to, especially while the child is teething. It's like the newborn phase, but just it looks similar to that, but different in a sense that you're constantly waking, you're constantly exhausted. And not just that, you're then trying to look after a small human who is unwell. And that can be scary and frightening if it goes too far. And also look after yourself when you're unwell, which as we know is enough as it is. So there's a lot of layers, as I said. I'm going to finish up the podcast soon, but how to regain your confidence, like after all of this, how to get it back. I don't have any sort of words of wisdom for this situation where you're talking semantics, other than for me personally, it was letting go of the idea, and I Alex, because he's worse than I am now for it, letting go of the idea that your kid has to be perfectly happy all the time, not letting them be sad, but more that if they're crying, they cry, and obviously comfort them, do everything you can, but that's not something to be embarrassed about. That's just a human being having emotion, expressing. And it's your child. It's none of anybody else's business. What is happening, right? Unless they want to provide, even then, strangers, I don't really want assistance from strangers, unless I'm like struggling to put a pram in the car, right? But it's like, I've had to communicate this to Alex. It is okay. She's crying. It is okay. I will take her. Let me take her. I will go change her nappy. I'll take her out if I'll remove her. We'll just go home. And I'm not disappointed that we have to go home. It is okay to just pull the pin and be like, you know what? It's not working. Let's go. That's all right. We tried. And it's like, that is disheartening that you have to do that you have to, or you feel like you have to do that. Sorry, I've got something in my eye, guys, for who's watching on YouTube. Love being sick. It's just everything's falling apart. It's okay to abandon ship and just go, nah, that's it. It's fine. And that's been my biggest lesson, is like, I definitely think with the second child, of course, I'm going to be more heightened and anxious, and hormones will have a role to play in that as well, because you've got those postpartum hormones, which then can really affect your moods and then make you even more anxious, and, where you just barely sleep because you're thinking about everything and you're worried about the safety of your child all the time. It's the strangest thing. But if that doesn't work, like, I definitely think having a second, third child, I've heard from other mothers that like they just eventually just relinquish control and just go, it is what it is. I have a crying baby. Like, we'll just get through this day, you know, and get through getting home or whatever it might be. And just leaving the house, just leaving, even if it's not perfect, leaving, picking up the things when you're out. The amount of nappy blowouts I had where I didn't have spare outfits and I just went and bought one. I went, all right, well, you know, it hasn't been washed, but this is just going to have to do for now. So definitely relinquishing control with the ideas of perfection and perfectionism, because I think that definitely kills us as mothers, is the idea that we need to be perfect. It all needs to be perfect and it all needs to look dandy, and that we can't show ourselves grace or forgiveness because it would show weakness or something. I don't know, but it's like, you know, I've said this so many times to Alex. He's a very regimented man. I said to him, be prepared for the idea that your toddler is going to throw your life into chaos a lot, and you're going to have to physically and mentally be able to cope with that eventually, and just, it will teach you the most amount of patience. I am definitely the person who doesn't care if I'm late for something, I don't care. Like, sorry for anyone if I've ever been late for anything, because I'm like, no one's dying. Like, to me, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You're late, you miss the plane. Like, you're late, you miss the first 5 minutes, whatever. Yes, it is probably considered to be rude. But also, like, if you couldn't control the circumstances, what is the point of being stressed or anxious about it, right? So I definitely think it would be easier. That part would be easier with a second or third child. Not that having a second or third child is easier whatsoever, but I think that component of leaving the house might be slightly less distorted, because you're obviously, you know what you're doing, you're a bit more prepared. And also your first experience saw that you were very sheltered in that sense. And I know a lot of mums have said, you know, I left there, I tried more of a social life or whatever it was, and just not let this impact us so much. But of course, you still will regress and, you know, recluse. It's normal. It's okay to just not want to people because you're cooked. And then this other side of like regaining confidence. It's okay to want different things for yourself. It's okay to want to improve your body. It's okay to want to like what you see in the mirror. That is not vain. That is just literally evolving your identity. Like, you know, for the first time, Lila, I'm going to say, like, it was probably around her first birthday. My goal was her first birthday, and that gave me plenty of time, right? Around that time, I started to feel like me again, and more, but it's not even like I will never feel the old version of myself, ever. Neither will any mother, but I certainly feel more like that girl, but just a lot stronger and a lot wiser and a lot more patient and kind and empathetic, because these are all things that develop as we become mothers, right? But from like a physical sense, yeah, I feel more like my old physical body than I ever have. There's obviously going to be some differences. We know that. That's, you know, version 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0 after having multiple kids. But this anxiety that we have around leaving the house because of our physical image or the way that we feel about ourselves, it will remain the same unless we start to tap away at the little influences that we have on that, right? And also tap away at the guilt that we hold for doing anything about it, right? Obviously, the outer layer, if you imagine a circle, there is the mum guilt. On the inside of it is that, you know, this is the problem, this is the core, whatever. I'm not happy with the way I look or feel about myself, and I'm not confident. My connection with my partner is shitty. Like, this is the problem. And on the outer circle, it's like, okay, not moving as much, you know, not exercising, nutrition needs to be addressed, over-consuming calories, liquid calories, not eating enough food in general, but too many calories overall, which people don't understand the difference, which is why we're here as coaches to explain that, but also just in general to just fix what's happening for you so that you can focus on doing what you need to do, and we make it less complex, right? So it doesn't hurt your brain whenever you try and think about it with everything else that's going on. So there is there. And then on the outer layer of that, there is the relationship with yourself, your self-belief as to whether you actually can do this, your ideologies in association with whether or not this is actionable, which actually it is, but it's also your life circumstances and things. So your commitments, your home equipment, how far you are from a gym, all that type of stuff. And then on that very outer layer, we've got guilt. Guilt is this huge part of what holds us back, because it's just this major thing I see with mothers, which is, if I go and do this, I could be doing this instead, you know? And so we just feed back into this horrible cycle of, I hate myself, but I can't do anything about it, because if I do, then I'll hate myself for doing that too. So we don't really give ourselves much of an option, and we box ourselves in. But then we go back to because I'm a mum and because I've got a kid or because I've got a baby, I'm not supported, and societally, we're not structured well. And I would agree, absolutely. Mothers we're trying to wear so many fucking hats all the time and do everything and be everything to everybody and shove so much into our days that no wonder we are left over as the last possible thing on our list, right? So it's a bigger thing unpacking all of this, because I think that the anxiety into leaving the house with, depending on the child, obviously, and how ongoing and everything is, like it's going to be very different for each person, that will naturally resolve over time, and we eventually develop a way of coping, hopefully, or we need to. Otherwise, that doesn't work out so well. But this is more complex, I think, because it's an internal thing, meaning that we are responsible for the way that we feel about ourselves and what we action. And I really believe that is why coaching or any sort of form of accountability is so crucial for mothers, because if you think about it, it's a lifeline. It is support that they do not get in the rest of their life. And yes, paying for it sucks, but also when you do that and you invest in something and you are paying for it, you're so much more likely to be doing it and using it. Like, why do you think you pay for your Netflix subscription? Because you use it. If you didn't pay for it and it was free, would you use it as much? Maybe not, because you wouldn't really be grateful for it. So I guess what this leads into is getting support does not make you weak. And if anything, it will show you a side of yourself, the happier side of you that you want to show up as for your children, for your partner, where you don't resent your role, because you might have a half an hour or whatever to yourself daily, or you might figure out the semantics of how to do this with the kids' sports. And that's actually what we do. Like, as coaches, I will go in and I will consult with a person and I will get to the absolute nitty-gritty bottom of every intricate part of their life, to the extent where then we'll get to a barrier, which I can find. I know it's the main barrier. And I will chip away at it, not in a way that guilts a mother or makes her feel worse for that, but more so gives her permission to change that barrier, to pass off her own guilt, to go, no, that is not logical. And it is emotionally fueled based on my maternal instinct to look after my children, and maybe a little bit of that societal pressure that is very much a thing, but also doesn't matter. It's not relevant what other people think about you or what you do with your life or your children. At the end of the day, they're not important to you. And even your most important loved ones, it's not relevant what they think either. It's your family, it's your choice, it's your life. If we worry about what other people think, we're not living our lives for ourselves and our family, are we? We're living it for other people. So anyway, that's it from this podcast. It's a long one. To regain confidence, in essence, reaching out for support is probably one of the best things you can do, because doing it on your own is hard. I know this from personal experience, much, much harder than getting support. But I do know that my partner was very supportive through that process, and he's like my coach. He keeps me accountable and also checks me when I'm saying negative things to myself, which is very comforting. But you also need someone who knows what they're doing. And I know what I'm doing with nutrition and training. So that part of it's easy for me. So we piece together the rest for you. We piece together every single part that is missing for you. And we get you back to being able to leave the house and actually wanting to leave the house and wanting to book in a date night with your partner, right? And wanting to have this association with leaving the house being freedom and calm and, not seeing it as an obstacle anymore. All right. So that is it from me. I'm going to finish up the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Looking forward to doing another one for you soon. Bye-bye.